Hey, welcome back to Engineers Workshop. It's been a while, about 3 months since I've put out a video. It's not that I haven't been working, I just haven't been working so much here in the shop. I've been tied up with a lot of projects for the house, things such as getting the internet connected from this building, boxes up there on the wall, with 1,800 feet of underground fiber optic to take the signal from this building to an adjacent property to where my house is. And so that was quite involved in just getting all that trenched and buried and terminated and getting everything running. Plus doing a lot of house renovations and dealing with a couple of epic porch fails, I guess you could call them. So, those are the things that have been occupying my time for the past 3 months. I think the house could probably do with a channel of its own. I know exactly what I'd call it too. I'd call it This Damn House, and just, go over all of the things that it takes to keep a 175-year-old home up and running, and also bring it from, a state of the electrics and plumbing and insulation from nothing to, living like a modern family does today. And for those of you new to this channel, I'm setting up a machining and fabrication workshop in this building. It once was a sawmill. Sawmill's been operating on this property for probably 60 years before they all went belly up. And originally this property was part of our Victorian farm and was sold off back in the 1950s to various sawmills. And we had an opportunity to buy it back about 10, 12 years ago. So this building is a 6,200 plus square foot building, 50 by 125, and it has 17-foot tall sidewalls. So it's an enormous shop. I call it the monster shop. Unfortunately, it was never fully enclosed, so I've got a lot of openings that there's no doors to, and dirt and filth and leaves blow in. You can't condition it because so many openings, but time and money, I will get things enclosed and improve the floor. There's dozens of cut-off pipes and steel pieces where all of the sawmill equipment was attached that are trip factors, and probably going to end up pouring a new slab, 3.5 inch, 4 inch slab on top of what's here just in case all that. But enough about the building. You can check out my older videos to see what I've been up to with improving this property. So let's talk about this guy right here. So I'm over here with the Rosenfors RFV vertical mill, the $350 Rosenfors mill. And I just discovered a neat feature on this, got some documentation for it, and I wanted to show you one of the things that's kind of like deja vu all over again. I made these little quill stops with a scallop in it to trap the centers on my Cincinnati tool and cutter grinder, and worked all that out, did them on the K&T rotary head mill, and then I see a cutaway diagram of what's inside this mill, which has like an 8-inch quill, and lo and behold, it has the exact same configuration on a much bigger scale. So I went ahead and pulled those out, cleaned them up, and let me show you those things. Then I guess I'll wrap up with how I plan to power this, because this is 440 volts, 460 volts, and I don't know that I can convert the knee motor into a 220. So I'm going to attempt to power this with, shop-generated 460 volts off my rotary phase converter. And I'll give you a quick peek at my son's Spitfire project, the engine swap that he's doing in that, and we'll call it an update. So let me show you the documentation for this first. When I got the milling machine, I went online to see what kind of documentation I could find, and I only found one source that had 2 manuals for the Rosenfors. They were asking a lot of money for these things. They were asking $175 each. So I tried to get both for a significant discount. They wouldn't do it. I said, well, I'm going to have to pick one. So I bought this one first, And this was the instruction book. I thought that would be the more useful one. But it is for all 4 versions: the plain milling machine, the universal, the RFV is the one I have, and then there's the RFV with a quill feed. I mean, it has, you know, descriptions and lots of good stuff. Not a lot of diagrams. Does tell you how to swivel the head and things like that. But after looking at this, I kind of wish I bought the other one, and so a couple months later I did, and this was the spare parts list. Now this one has all of the nice section views and parts callouts for the various components, also for all different variants, but much more useful for me. Now if you look at this section of the head on the vertical machine, you can see that this calls out the bearing sizes, and these are like SKF tapered roller bearings. And I don't know about the precision of these things, but you know, I looked up this number, which is the largest one, and that was only about 130 bucks. So, you know, the bearings for this machine could be had for a reasonable amount of money. But the thing that I wanted to call your attention to was this area right here, and that section AA is through the quill stop. And this is section AA, and if you look at that, this has a configuration exactly like the centers on my Cincinnati tool and cutter grinder and the stops that I made for that. And let me show you the difference of these, but it basically has 2 cylindrical pieces with scallops that pull together and pinch against that quill, and that's about an 8-inch quill. So let me show you these parts. If you recall from my videos on the Cincinnati tool and cutter grinder, I have 2 sets of centers for doing cutters between centers. One set was missing a means to lock these quills in place, and I did a little bit of you know, thinking about it. How did these things work? There was only one at the top with a little diagonal cut, and I decided to make 2 where they clamp top to bottom and have a mating scallop to this. And so that's the lock that I made. And if I take this out all the way, basically these will pull out, and then you can see, I'll get you in here a little bit closer, but those pull up against that and then lock it in place. You can see those have a mating diameter. This is I believe this was 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch diameter, and I swung that cut with the K&T rotary head mill, and it basically just pulls them together and clamps that quill in its bore. So there we have the quill locks for the tool and cutter grinder. This is made out of, I think it's 1/2 inch or 5/8 bar stock from McMaster. Now the Rosenfors mill has an 8-inch quill, and let me show you the corresponding parts for locking that 8-inch quill in place. We've got that, and we've got this. So the quill locks for the Rosenfors bigger than the quill itself for the Cincinnati tool and cutter grinder. Now they go into this bore in the back of the head, and you can see the quill vertically projecting into that bore, and the actuator handles on this side, and it just pinches the 2 sides of that quill together to trap it so it doesn't wander vertically up and down during a cut. Now this moves very freely in this bore, and it basically comes right up against the quill and stops. There's really no play. But when I put this in from the other side, this starts to drag in that bore, and I believe I've got a deviation from, you know, a true straight line here. And once this starts to pilot, it's forcing this guy off center. So I'm going to put this in the lathe and see if I can determine how much run out I've gotten here and try to straighten it out a bit. I've got my high side marked here, and I've got about 20 thousandths TIR run out, which is enough to point this thing 10 thousandths off center and cause a problem. So I don't want to thump this thing every time. I'm wondering if I can maybe slip a pipe over this and get a little bit of flex on it before I start thumping on it and moving it. Huh. I made it swap sides. It was easier to move than I thought. Let's try a little bit of lead hammer action. I'm going to put this on 10 thousandths. See how far I move it. That moves it. That's running within a few thousandths. Let's see if it will load up without causing an issue. Still tight. It's actually getting looser. Now, in order to get the handle on, I had to remove the actual locking knob from this piece. So I couldn't swing it. It hits here. Does its job. Yep. Pretty happy with that. Also figured I'd give you a look at this. Mounted up a line control. It's like a motor starter. Basically, this is going to turn on the rotary phase converter. I did have to substitute in a much higher capacity contactor. This is like a 30 horsepower contactor, but that's how I'm going to turn on my rotary phase converter. Right now, I'm troubleshooting. I smoked a couple of my motor starting capacitors and the converter won't start, so I've got to get some replacements in there, get everything dialed in to where that comes up to speed. But from that point, you know, this would be the means to start the rotary phase converter and stop it. And then with the breaker up here, that will turn on the transformer. It's a three-phase 45 kVA transformer that I've got hooked up in reverse. It's going to take the 230 from the rotary phase converter and boost it up to 460 to run the Rosenfors mill and any other high voltage equipment that I will have in the shop in the future. Figured I'd give you a quick peek at the progress on the Spitfire engine conversion. Mark IV Jetta TDI diesel, custom injection pump, custom bracket to move the accessory drive forward about 4 inches with a spacer that I machine and various other components. He has third-party radiator intercooler. He's got some nice aluminum heat exchanger pipes there and high temp silicone rubber hoses to connect everything. The manifold was custom job by my son after I milled the top off of that. All of this done on the K&T, so getting pretty close to starting this bad boy up. The battery did sit here. He relocated that to the trunk. And there's the battery tucked into the back corner of the car. Actually, that's not one battery, that's two 450 cranking amp motorcycle batteries hooked in parallel with some custom copper bus bars. So it just fit better in that space that he had there. Well, there you have it, a little bit of an update for Engineer's Workshop. Pecking away at the Rosenfors mill. I got it reoriented here in the shop so I can start its journey back. It's going to sit kind of diagonally from the K&T, and eventually I'm going to have a jib crane that would be able to swing and do things like load the rotary table onto either one of these tables from the same location. So that should be a good setup. Got to take the hoist down, and after I get this thing on rollers and start rolling it by hand to the back of the shop. So thanks again for watching and subscribing, bearing with me through the dry spell without videos. I will try to get things going more as the spring and summer progresses and give you some more regular updates. But for now, it's been about 3 months since my last video. So hit that like button, subscribe if you're not, and follow my progress getting this monster shop enclosed and functioning as a machining and fabrication shop. Thanks again for watching and subscribing. Take care.